Begging for.
It'll be fun.
Oh yeah, it was like look at all the hits we got. Yeah, but you guys said this, and this. I was like, yeah, but look at all the hits we got.
You guys are live now.
All right. Welcome, everyone. This is our second Dungeon Masters Roundtable. Very excited to have another esteemed panel of Dungeon Masters. Shoot, that's what I wanted to look at. We actually kind of inadvertently posed the question, what do you call a group of Dungeon Masters? A collection of Dungeon Masters, a horde of, a TPK of Dungeon Masters. Somebody did say a murder of Dungeon Masters.
A murder of Dungeon Masters did come out.
So, yeah, we haven't really settled on a name for that, but
Table.
a table of Dungeon Masters. Okay?
An accounting.
An accounting of Dungeon Masters. Well, whatever you call it, we're here with 4 great Dungeon Masters. All of you have varying degrees of experience. We have some newer Dungeon Masters. We have some more experienced Dungeon Masters, but we have, nonetheless, great Dungeon Masters. I had a great time at this roundtable when we did the last one, so I'm very excited to talk to you guys again. We got some great questions from the community, and we kind of have a topic that seemed to float to the surface. Generally, our idea when we were doing this is just to take questions, whatever's on the players' minds, but I think what's on a lot of players and Dungeon Masters' minds lately is new players. Perhaps it's because there's a new edition of Dungeons & Dragons out. It's a great time for new people to jump in. So we have heard from new Dungeon Masters who are looking for advice on how they began preparing adventures, and also from how experienced Dungeon Masters can introduce D&D to new players, as well as we've heard a lot of introducing Dungeons & Dragons to kids. So I know that you all have experience with these topics and many of the other ones, so I would love to get started by asking you all to please introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your history with Dungeon Mastering, and we'll take it from there. Derek, would you like to kick things off?
Sure. I'm Derek Gooder. I work at Gen Con, which is the best 4 days in gaming. I gotta keep grinding.
Always working.
Yeah, so my experience with DMing is actually somewhat of a latecomer to D&D itself. A lot of my experience running games came from World of Darkness and a lot of the narrative storyteller kind of stuff. So I did a lot of that, and then played 3.5 and 3rd edition. I got really big in 4th edition, and I've been running a fair amount of 5th edition now as well. And that's, I guess, kind of where I'm coming in here, is that I've been running a 5th edition game for kids that actually it started out as 4th, and now it's 5th and stuff like that, that I've been running for kids in an ice cream parlor slash pinball arcade slash retro stand-up arcade. It's a crazy environment to try to keep kids' attention in.
Yeah.
But I've been doing that, I think, like 4 years now.
That was pretty awesome. Definitely want to talk more about that.
Very good. I'm Katie Lawrence. I am actually a business intelligence analyst here at Wizards of the Coast.
Very cool title.
That sounds like you're a spy. I'm just gonna put that out there. We employ a spy, everybody, just so you know.
And we've just
crap!
blown her cover.
Crap!
Sorry.
Stop talking about it. So I'm relatively new to D&D, so I've been playing on and off for about 4 years, so started in 4th edition, and I'm actually still in my first year of being a DM, so I'm fresh to the scene.
Sweet.
Enjoying the hell out of it.
Very brave.
Nice.
I'm Jefferson Dunlap. I'm the graphic pre-press manager at Wizards of the Coast, and I've been playing D&D since the 70s. It's been a very long time. And the reason I usually end up being the DM is because I'm the only one that takes the time to read the rules. So a lot of the groups that I've run over the years have been half with players that read the rules and half with not, and which is actually really fun. They're different levels of experience, because you'll have people who read the rules that want to try to make a really good character, and they want to try to use rules to make a great character game-wise, and then you'll have people who are new that want to make a great character story-wise. So the campaign I'm running now in 5th edition has been going on for about, it started in 4th, and I'd say about 2 or 3 years is the campaign I'm doing right now, and I love 5th edition.
Oh, another plus.
I'm Richard Winters. I'm a senior art director on D&D, and I mostly focus on world building and concept art and stuff like that. So I draw stuff too, which is awesome when you're a DM and you can draw.
Oh yeah.
So it looks like
Great
this.
for everything. It really does look like
I
that.
hate all of you.
You should ask Greg to show some of his.
That would actually be a really fun Tumblr.
I've got a
blog
player
we
who
should
can
do.
draw, so.
Oh, there
Just,
you go.
yeah, just as good. Hey, draw me that thing right now.
Yeah,
I've been DMing about 26 years, I figured out. And I played for a few years before that, and then DM'd after that. And I started with old school AD&D and all that
Right.
crazy stuff.
Cool. I didn't realize that you had been DMing for that long.
Yes, I'm very old.
No, you say you were just a child when you started.
Extremely experienced.
It's almost time to
Yes.
put me down.
Oh.
This tire's getting bald.
And we go full circle back to the pet conversation we
Yeah.
were having before we went live. Anyway, let's start things off talking about new players. So, one of the questions that we got from the community, and I think this question probably represents a lot of people, I want to introduce my friends to Dungeons & Dragons, but I don't want them to feel completely overwhelmed from the start. What is the best way to give them feel of the game without making them feel like they need to know every single rule? And I think that there is that perception with people who want to play Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know how to play. I don't have time to read all the rule books. What do I do? You don't really need to, right?
No.
All right.
Ask them what they want to be. And if they ask if they say, well, can I be this? And you can say, and if there's something, not something like that in the game, you say, well, how about this? Or, oh, I want to be a guy with a bow. Well, you saw Lord of the Rings, what do you think of Aragorn? And then you just build it from there. It's almost like have them say what they want to be before you start plugging in numbers.
Yeah. I'd say, like, if you had brand new players, or if I had brand new players, or kids, or something like that, give them a D20, and give them an armor class, and tell them, like, pick some kind of weapon you want to use, and give them the die that has, give them a few hit points, and then just start playing. And, like, if they really get the bug for it, they'll go through the books and they'll be like, this is interesting and all that stuff. But if you just want to get out of the gate and start going, just start with those basic 4 things and you can just run. And that's really all you need, especially for kids and stuff.
Well, I think a lot of it really depends on the individual players you're trying to introduce, because some people they just want to try it out a little bit, but some people already feel that they want to make this a thing, and they want to have some knobs and stuff to turn.
Yes.
But like in my experience, I've actually found that people saying, "Hey, I don't know all the rules, I can't do it," is actually a cover for what they're really concerned about, which is they don't feel confident role playing.
Yes,
And
I
they're really
agree with that.
So like there's a lot of like, well, I've never done this before. I feel weird doing it. I feel awkward doing it. And a lot of times I just remind people, like, you don't have to speak in character. You don't have to do anything. You can sit there and just say, hey, I hit the guy. All right, my turn's done. Just move on. As long as you're having fun at the table, I don't really care. You can be as immersed as you want or not. Like, the whole point is we're having fun as a group. Yeah. And if you want to get into character, great, we'll do that. If you want to be like, my guy goes and talks to him and here's the summary of what I say, that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah.
Any given player is gonna swing back and forth between wanting to be in character and not wanting to be in character. At different times, different characters, different groups. Like, that is totally okay.
I think partially too, a lot of people who are perhaps interested in getting into it, they understand that the breadth of what they can do is really rich. At the same time, that richness feels really vast, really clouded, and mystery is unknown. I find that for some new players, showing them an example of what a game really is like is really helpful, and there's so many awesome, podcasts out there and videos that are available now that you can say, hey, go and watch this one. It's a super fun group, and you can kind of see what that's like. And that helps remove the veil a little bit and show them that it's really just a group of friends having a good time telling a story.
Yeah, I think sometimes in the past you'd have movies or TV where it showed people in costume around the table, speaking in voices and holding plastic weapons, and that would like, is that what you do? Is that what happens? It's like no, not at all.
One of my huge pet peeves is scenes like that
where everybody is hanging on every word the game master says, and the game master says what the players say, what they do, like everything.
Right.
And they even roll the dice. I've seen that.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
it drives me nuts.
yeah.
I think
So-
there's a lot more honest depictions now.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know,
definitely.
especially in like, you know, just some guy throwing up a video somewhere. You'll see a lot more just real depictions of what it's really like.
Yeah, I think a lot of the live streams now, it's empowering to see these people deal with DMing and just actually having fun at the table and not being so stressed out of like, I have to get everything correct. It's like, no, we're generally, we screw things up all the time as a DM. Generally, we just make it look like we didn't screw things up.
Yeah, that
is all it comes down to. It's like, that was always meant to happen. Or that idea that you thought I had, I totally have it now. I think there's a lot of that.
And it's fine to ask questions too. I think people need to understand and feel comfortable at the table. Like, I mean, Trevor can attest to this, and I say this every time. How many times do I say,
This is true.
too hard in the moment of combat.
It's also on the table.
I've actually started separating them out. So now I've
Well,
figured that out. But,
If you had started with World of Darkness, you would know what the D10s are.
Oh, well, that would be a horrible thing to start with, since it's not.
Yeah. But so to follow up on what you mentioned too, with the variety of options, I've found that one of the really big challenges when you're just like, hey, what do you want to play, is well, I don't know what I want to play, but it very quickly leads to what should I play, and I think that a lot of people who aren't used to role playing, and even people who are used to role playing, assume that there's a correct way and that there's a thing they should be doing, and they don't know what that thing is, so they get really nervous that they are not doing what they're supposed to do, and telling people that is not the case is really hard to get people comfortable with the idea that just do your thing, and as long as we're all having fun, then the thing you did is what you should have done.
Right.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It's so funny that you say that, because that was my number one fear when I was going in to play for the very first time. I knew I was going to be the only new person in there, and that was my biggest fear. Is like, I don't know how to act in here. I don't know what's going to be expected of me. I don't know the rules. And if I had felt like I'd known the rules and didn't know the interaction part, maybe it would have felt more comfortable, but I didn't know any of it, and so it was just, I don't want to not meet people's expectations.
Yeah.
And that's one thing where I've been trying to find the best way to get across to people that D&D isn't about performing to expectations, and it's not about competitiveness. It's not about meeting a mark. It is just a very sweet collaborative space, and to that end, like, you're all in it to try to boost everyone up and try to, make it the most surprising, exciting time.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have expectations for people to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You were saying?
Oh, I was just saying to what you were saying before, like the idea I threw out there of starting with just like basic things like armor class, hit points, damage, stuff like that. And people kind of come up with things. They're like, I don't know what I want to play. Maybe I'll be like a ranger or something, or maybe I'll be like that character from Lord of the Rings, or this or that. It's like, sure, but you're playing, and you're showing them how to play. You're doing it super quickly, and they run through it, and then maybe they get smushed by a giant or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And at the end of it, they're like, oh, I get it. That's how this works.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, well, now I really want to design a character, or I really want to do a thing.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of great success with that, because people feel like when they see the books that there's this giant barrier to entry.
Right.
And it's sort of like, just get rid of that, because as soon as I hook you with that, and you're like, this is really fun. This is like way more open world than Skyrim or anything else can touch.
Yeah.
Then it's like, I hook you with that, and then you'll be interested enough to read all the fun stuff that you can do.
Yeah, and add to it. Isn't it hard though, explaining to people who don't know what D&D is, what D&D is? Because I still
Yeah.
feel like I'm telling my parents, there is no board. Stop asking us what. There is no board. There are no little. I mean, you can use minis,
The
of course,
hard thing for people to get, I think, is the concept of role playing. And one example I always give is one time when I went home for Christmas, I took 2 card games with me. I took Great Dalmuti and I took Guillotine. And I showed them Great Dalmuti, and my family got it. They got it right away. We know how to do this.
Now, Guillotine is a card game like Dalmoody, but it has more of a kind of a story. It has more of a concept where you're an executioner, you lay out the heads, that right over their heads. They could not get why they were doing it, and I think that's the thing is if you can sell the concept of role playing and the understanding that you can do what you want within the context of these rules, then half the battle is won. If they get the role playing part, then you got them.
The interesting thing to me is that I think that there's never been an easier time to get the concept across.
Definitely,
because like especially with the kids. You know, I am shameless about using video game terminology to explain what's going on.
You want to be a meat shield. You want to be
exactly. Or like, you know, like in the middle of combat when someone's confused, I'm like, don't worry, he drew aggro from this guy or whatever else. Like,
you want high DPS.
Yeah, exactly. Like use the terms they're familiar with. Yeah. But you know, stuff like Mass Effect, you know, computer RPGs or console RPGs that have really strong story components. Like the Telltale games are pretty much all story components at this point. You can use that to really get across what you're doing. Because like I'll just tell people, you know, you played Skyrim? Yeah, I played Skyrim. Remember how you had a choice of things you could pick from when you talk to somebody? They're like, yeah. Well, just imagine that list is whatever you can come up with,
huge.
And that's it. And like that's it.
Yeah.
Or imagine that's the game, but you know, someone is watching you reacting to whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah. You guys are actually touching on like the next thing that I know that I wanted to talk about. It's for me, when I was new, I had a friend who had DM'd a lot, and it was great having him actually as one of my players because I didn't. Once we started going, I saw that he was role playing. Right, he was the only one at the table that was really role playing more than I was, and more than the other new people at the table were. Which I thought was great for me. I can also think that could be intimidating when you're playing for your DM. Yeah. But it was awesome because what ended up happening was the players started role-playing more. And then I started role-playing more. I started getting more into it. And I was super thankful once I got that out of the way because it kind of became normal for me and the other players. But one of the questions on here is what do you think is best? You're introducing people to the game. Do you want to have all new players? Or do you want to have a mix? What would you suggest?
Yeah, like the new players might not feel intimidated because they're all new, but then again, there's a big onus on you as the dungeon master to be the only source of knowledge for them, and maybe, like Katie, you and I had talked about your group, 'cause I think it's a mix.
Yeah, so my party is big right now. It's 6 people, which is huge, but half of them are experienced, and half of them haven't played in years and years, and it's essentially a new experience for them. I really like that mix. It almost sorts out a little bit like a buddy system where there's always, you know, like when you go on a field trip, you got your buddy and there's always somebody you can lean to and ask a question, but you don't feel like you're interrupting the whole adventure to raise your hand and say, I don't know how to do this. But I've also been a new player where I'm the only one at the table. It probably felt intimidating. Mm-hmm. It was a really welcoming group, so that ended up being okay. Yeah. But I like an even mix if that's possible. Mm-hmm. I think all new players would be hard, especially if it was a large-ish group, would probably be just really taxing for the DM.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, I mean, like as he gets at a con and stuff.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Because the kids I run for, there's one kid who is very precocious, and he runs D&D, he runs Pathfinder, he gobbles it all up. Everybody else at the table, either their enthusiasm for the rules engagement is cast off from him, and they're just kind of picking it up, or they have no idea and they don't care and they just want to be there and they're having fun. And we've gotten up to 8 or 10 players at a time, I think. And yeah,
wow.
It's yeah.
By the way, if you haven't done that out there, don't.
Well, I mean, it's really hard when you have another couple kids show up who are like, "What are you doing? Can I play?" And I'm like,
"You can't say no." You can't say no.
Well, the trick that I usually do, especially if those kids aren't reliable, is be like, "Yeah, here are some monsters," you know, and like just. Because for a while I was printing out the monster sheets, especially in 4th edition, it was easy. And I would just be like, you know, here's the monster. On your turn, you're going to do some stuff and let me know what you want me to tell you, and then we would move on. And that was a good way to let the kid play with the rules and the table before he had to make a commitment of, I want to show up every week. Yeah. But it is pretty much entirely a new group. But I think for them, it really depends on the players, I would
Yeah.
think, because some players really do want to have the I guess the mentor to look up to. But I do think that a number of the kids like that they don't have another person who's great at role playing to compare themselves to.
Sure.
So they all feel like they're doing about as well. And even within the group, some of them are still like, oh, everybody else is role playing better than me. And I'm like, when? Because come on.
Right.
Like, your guys are all doing pretty good. So it really depends on the players. And, like that goes back to the root of almost every how do I DM or how do I deal with this group issue is talk to the group. Because, we're going to say amazing stuff about all the awesome stuff that we did or the horrible stuff that we did, and it's all for the group that we played with.
Right.
And anytime I've ever had a problem with a group or heard about a problem with a group, it almost always boils down to, well, did the group sit down and talk about what they actually wanted to do? Because that's usually where the disconnect comes into play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I remember, this is sort of half on, half off topic, but I had a friend of mine who taught in Korea for a few years. He was teaching English to Korean students, and one of the things he used was a really simplified version of D&D.
Sweet.
So they're all
Really?
That is
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, so in that case, they're all brand new players because not only are they new to that type of game, but they get it because they come from a video game type of explanation.
Right.
But also new to English. So he was sort of like, we can play this game, but we're going to use English. And he sort of like brought them through that way. And, that was kind of the cool part. It's like the game got them excited enough to learn all that types of thing. But I would definitely say, yeah, if a mix of new players and experienced players is cool because you, like you said, you can always buddy system them, and then you can DM, and somebody else can help sort of guide them.
Right.
And I just did this at lunch today. I'm going to be starting a lunchtime group, and I had a mix. I had 2 players who were experienced, and 3 players. A player who's experienced with 4th, and 2 others who had not played D&D at all.
Oh, really?
And it worked fine. I mean, we made the characters, and one of the experienced people helped with making the characters,
Yeah,
and just
right.
going back and forth. And one of the things I do for new players is I collect all the character sheets, and I check and make sure that the math is good and that everything is clear. And when I give it back to them, then it's totally clear. They'll feel confident knowing that, oh, everything's right, my
Right.
numbers are
Right.
right, whatever, I didn't do anything wrong, and that usually helps a lot too. But what's kind of interesting now is that we're all kind of new players with a new edition in a
Right.
weird way. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
is. Making encounters is different. Making characters is different. There's little nuances that are different with this new edition, which makes it all
Yeah, I was on at InSpace talking about the Circus Legend game, and critical misses came up, critical failures came up, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, whatever. And Christopher P was like, no, those aren't in the new edition. I'm like, what? Like, I've been using them. I probably will still keep using them.
Yeah.
It just provides it was just like, one used to be an automatic miss, like it's no longer an automatic miss now. And I'm like, oh, sweet. I probably will still make an automatic miss. But I just been running it wrong, and it's that same thing. It's like I have some assumptions from playing previous stuff, and it's so easy just to sit down and run a game without really knowing the rules. Like, I know how monsters work, I know how combat works, I know how other conflict works, and mostly it's just lots of role playing. But yeah, we're definitely still, even people in the office. Sorry, everybody. Definitely still learning the game.
So, what do you guys think, or how have you been using things like backgrounds in the trinket table, as tools to get your
Love
players
the
into role
backgrounds.
playing or creating more robust
So what's really kind of funny about that, so when they pick their backgrounds, you notice how their personalities and the flaws and all that are a table. And it is numbered, and you have the choice between rolling or choosing. Well, like today, half the people wanted to choose, and half the people wanted to roll, which I think is really cool. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, what's my flaw? I don't know. Clickety clickety clack. Oh, but they kept it because they wanted to. They just
it's
wanted
really
to see.
cool.
So no, I love the background.
It is one of my most favorite elements of the new edition. You weren't at our game, but we all got.
I missed like 2 games now. I think 3 games now.
But I've also have a player in my home game who made up his own.
Yes.
Which
Nice.
were fine.
Yeah.
And I looked them over and I'm like, because it all feeds, the thing about that is that they feed into the role playing. They feed into the concept, what the person has, the idea for their character.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, those are all cool. You get my approval.
Yeah.
I think I enjoy that they add a whole lot of richness, but like you said, that players can opt to using what portion of it they feel comfortable
Yeah.
with.
Mhm.
So, some of them, like you said, I had some that wrote this, large backstory and it was essentially fulfilling that purpose, but they
Yep.
came in and they had a strong sense of purpose. I have others that came in and some of them like to do like improv comedy and things, so they like that kind of discovery on the fly.
Yeah.
And so for them, they didn't really feel like they wanted a background. They wanted to get in a situation and kind of feel like, oh yeah, this is what my guy is really like, and discover that along the way. But all of the above works great.
Yeah.
So, and the mix is actually really nice and diverse.
The way that I've been using backgrounds a lot, I think, is actually a spotlight selector at the game. Because like a lot of the kids don't really have very strong character concepts. We talked through their backgrounds, we talked through their character histories when they made their characters. But they're not always the best at like staying true to that necessarily. They kind of just want to mess around. I found that they stay engaged with a lot of description and explanation. Sometimes I'm a little more describing what their characters are feeling than you would with more experienced players. But one of the ways that I try to pull the different players in is just keep a vague idea of their background and apply that very, very broadly with when I decide, who gets pulled into a situation or who an NPC reaches out to. Like we just had a thing where, we're playing through the starter set and they're getting to Cragmaw Castle now, and I was trying to describe how creepy the forest was, and I was like, okay, so who has a background as a wilderness guy? And one guy is like a hermit, one guy is, like the ranger straight out there. And I'm like, you guys have been at forests that are a little bit creepy like this. Is not where you like to hang out, but you're okay. Mm-hmm. But the guy who's a total city slicker, I'm like, this is way beyond your comfort zone. You are completely freaked out. And then when the Sturges attacked, obviously the people who are familiar with nature, they were not the ones who were initially targeted with the Sturges. So, I've used that to kind of figure out who to throw things at, because then it also reminds them a little bit, and it helps me kind of spread interaction a little bit across the table, so that I'm not always picking on who is the most prominent.
I like how it has, you always have at the beginning of a game with a bunch of new characters, that's that sort of moment, like how did they all meet? Right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing?
In a tavern.
Exactly. In a tavern.
90% of the time, at least.
The interesting
Love to
part of
see
the
that
backgrounds is everyone's thought a bit about their characters, and then you can ask people, it's like, okay, so do any of you guys know each other? Right? It's like, oh yeah, so our characters have been friends for a little while, and we don't know you, and we know, and that kind of thing. And you can it helps work out this sort of background, so when you have that initial get-together, you're sort of like, okay, you two know each other, and you two know each other, and you are kind of on your own. And then you're dealing with kind of less factors to kind of have them meet up. So to me, that's a handy thing that you can leverage there.
There's a little bit of railroading I do with new players at the beginning, because I'll just ask them a similar question.
Mm-hmm.
I'll sit them down. We'll usually have a pre-game session,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, okay, so tell me why you're all friends.
Right.
Like, I say that part first, so they're not even thinking that they can be adversarial.
Especially
Right.
with new players, I do that.
Yeah.
But the past couple of campaigns, I've taken that a step further. And instead of saying, why are you all friends, I've asked them, what was the last adventure you guys just got back from?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's
like
cool.
that was kind of a trick that I pulled from Dungeon World, but it worked because it's going to be crazy, but I also have run a lot of Planescape for these kids, which is
Whoa.
bizarrely effective.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed. But
they get to play in a cartoon world.
yeah, that's exactly what they loved about it. So I basically was like, hey, what was the last adventure you guys just got back from? And they start telling me the story about how they were hunting down an angel and one of them lost an eye and like all this kind of crazy stuff that fleshed out the characters a whole bunch more. Just because I said we're going to take 20 minutes and each of you is going to tell me something that happened to you guys as a group last adventure.
That's really cool.
And
That's cool.
that I think
Really
created a really good like cohesive group.
I love that.
Use that one. That's really good.
Yeah, that is really good.
I want to ask a couple questions in chat before we lose them. You
Yeah.
want to ask that one there?
No.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
a devastating question. So you got your new players, right? And they've just done something, and they've failed that last death saving throw, or they've just been hit with something so hard that they didn't even get a saving throw,
Great
or
story.
they jumped into the lava or something, right? So how do you deal with that new player who's just had their first character die, and like a character that they're attached to? Go for it, Derek.
So I was running 4th edition. It was Keep in the Shadowfell, and
Rough.
which is rough. And they all got totally wiped.
Yeah, you just.
So Orcus came to all of them as they were dying,
Yes.
and offered them
That's
a
awesome.
deal
Oh,
for power.
I love that.
And they all took it.
No, only so basically like I had
Some
been
people
like
say,
because they had kept dying and basically I was like okay I would be like make some checks and they would get all freaked out and I'm like oh now you're back up and they're like what so I started freaking them out a little bit about how there's this necrotic stuff that's spreading across their body and they're getting all creeped out about all this weird stuff and then it finally was like at the end of nearing the end of the thing like who takes the deal from Orcus. And this was like at the climactic fight when they had the worst tactics possible. So one of them took the deal. None of the others would, and they were all like, there was some remarkable role playing for a group of kids.
Did they tell you privately that they're taking the deal, or just the whole group?
Nope,
know
no,
they're
the whole
taking it?
table
I'm not
knew.
taking the deal. Pass a note.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the
Will
whole
you
table
accept
knew.
Orcus's deal?
Yes,
Um,
no.
Maybe.
The whole table knew,
Orcus is cute.
and I think we played in the follow-up adventure when you kind of come back into the region, and I was like, okay, so you guys lost, the heroes lost, so they came back into the region and they got to like catch glimpses of the one character who had accepted the deal, like riding a Draculich kind of like across the zombie horde, and yeah, they had, but like they didn't feel like they had lost because a big dramatic thing happened.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of tricks to keep them alive after they've failed like saving throws or just had a TPK or something like that. A lot of times they've been captured and then had to talk their way out of something.
Capture's always a great one too. It's a lot of times I think people assume that default is death, but it doesn't have to be. There's really no reason.
Well, it's because they kept murdering
that
you,
things
right?
have to be exactly
Yeah.
Right.
have to be that violent. But like capturing or some other form of not death is always awesome too.
The other thing too that I think once you started playing D&D a little while is you're constantly celebrating the unexpected. Like that's often the joy that you're taking away from a session is that unexpected thing, whether it was good or bad for your character, right? And so there was one time we were playtesting for D&D Next, and so I was doing a playtest, and 4 out of 5 of the adventurers died in our adventure, and so the next week we came back. 3 out of 5 of us died again. We
Wow.
kept picking like the worst rooms in the dungeon. It was really poor choice, luck of the draw.
There are 2 dragons in this room.
But what was great is there was a mix of some of us were new and some of us weren't. But the ones that were experienced, it was so darn funny. At that point, just you're going out, but you're going out in a blaze of
Right.
glory.
You're gonna go out.
And
that's how
that
you wanna
glory
go.
in itself was great to celebrate, and we actually had a great time regenning new characters that were like coming in to avenge the ones that had fallen.
Oh,
So there was a
yeah.
lot of like my sibling that I had lost
I love
touch
that
with.
story.
Had
I'm Sir Reginald the 17th, here to avenge my 16
Right.
brothers.
All
And
name
so-
Reginald.
what was great about that, and especially with experienced people could kind of encourage that for the new ones, is not seeing not seeing it as just this painful parting with a character you got so excited about, but a natural part of a world where there's so much risk and reward, and carrying that on is some kind of epic legacy, and that's where the fun of D&D really happens. So
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. Jefferson, you probably lose players.
I have, but it's
Not players, characters.
Characters.
Yeah,
We're not killing players.
Very good.
We're not losing players.
My bad.
I try to do things like capture or, but sometimes there's a good death, and sometimes, they'll remember that, and then
Right.
they'll just make a new character.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the game.
Yeah.
I don't try to kill them.
Okay.
That's the thing.
I do
Yeah.
try to drop one a fight though.
You do try to what?
To drop one a fight.
Yeah, you gotta.
You gotta let them know it's serious.
drop
Yep.
unconscious.
Yep.
The
Okay.
thing that's
So we're not
funny
playing.
is when their dice go south sometimes. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
I have seen sessions where no one can roll above a 10.
Yep.
It's just no, and I'm there 16, 17, 19.
Right.
So yeah, it's
And we've had the
Or-
reverse.
and
Right.
we've done, and I've had it, and I've had the same thing happen where they just make this great encounter and they walk in, they're like, what, and then done. So,
Or just monsters, like, enemy after enemy, crit, and then every player, 1, 2,
Yeah,
1.
that was
But the
Yeah.
thing is that they talk about both
Exactly.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Like whether they're even if it's still fun in a way.
The
Yeah.
highest
Oh,
and the
yeah.
lowest points of the story are the most fun.
I,
Yeah.
I love it when players have gotten to the point where they embrace failure. Like a lot of the time, you like winning. It's all about winning a fight or winning the challenge or getting that cool suit you get. But like I love it when players got to the point where they rejoice in failing in some way, shape, or form. It's like, okay, now we're all really having fun.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it's fun to imitate, like, your spell going off, like
Yeah.
your shocking grasp.
And
But it's
missing.
really fun when I rolled, like, a 3, and I know I didn't hit. Like, instead of just saying, like, well, I didn't miss, like, what? No, I was, like, running up to the guy, and I tripped over a log, and I fell out of heels, and, yeah, so it is. Embracing the failure is part of
Yeah, that's what I
Part
tend
of the-
to
the
like.
game.
I'll take that player's character sheet and crumple it up, and take their dice away. And
And
Then
grind those
make
up,
them-
and then make porridge and make them eat it.
yeah, if they're wearing a costume, they have to go into the change room and change out of it and leave
Eat
the
your
costume,
failures.
and then leave the
Burn
room.
it in front of
Uh,
So Richard is telling you what not to do. I'm just saying.
Well,
Yeah.
to tell you the truth, it's sort of like it kind of depends on your game, I think.
Yeah.
Because like take a video game like Dark Souls, which is
Mhm.
just a grinder,
Yeah.
right? If I've had times where I've got together with have some friends who haven't hung out for a while, and it's like, let's play some D&D, and we're all from different places, and we just managed to get together at like Christmas time or something. We'll say, let's play a game, and we have like tonight. We don't have enough time for a campaign or anything like that, so you'll play a grinder, and you'll just if you die, you die, and you're
Yeah.
gonna go out in a blaze of glory, and you just have the most fun that you can.
Yeah.
And chew everybody up.
Just have some kind of award for the person who goes through the most character sheets. You just keep ripping
Yeah.
them, stacking them in front of people.
We had that Tower Gygax event at Gen Con,
Yep.
which was 24 hours all weekend. It was basically you pay a ticket, you got one life. And
Mhm.
when you died, out, next person sits.
Well, like the delves, right? Like it was all about how far you can get in the dungeon. Not about getting all the way through. It's like how many rooms can you get through?
Yeah.
Is your party the one that can get through the most? Have fun with that.
So I did want to mention that sometimes I do use the complete opposite approach, where I've had a TPK and I've sat down and said, okay, guys, like this is especially for the new players, for the kids, where like, okay, guys, like you did not do very well in that fight. Would you like me to tell you like why? Like because you guys didn't communicate at all. You didn't know how your characters worked.
That's
Like
that's cool.
so
Their parents
it was in the
do
starter
that.
set where that initial goblin cave
Which can be rough.
Yeah.
which can be rough and
Depending-
is
depending on how
very
you do it.
rough when the group splits up. They don't communicate. They don't know how the characters work.
Never
So
skip the party,
Yeah.
never.
No. I encourage them to do as much.
Yeah, I
because
pretty much. To be fair, I know that we say that, and it's true. Don't do it, but I'm pretty sure I do it almost every game.
Yeah.
Oh, I
So-
can attest to
Almost
that.
every game.
So what?
Hey, what's over here, everybody?
Yeah.
No,
So
not
so
everybody.
what happened is they get
I'll
to
just tell everybody
they
not
go
to.
through the caves and they get to that final fight with the hobgoblin, and they just got wiped.
Yeah. That's
And so I said, okay, guys.
Yeah.
I said, all right, we're gonna stop. Remember, I was trying to teach them to focus fire. I was trying to teach them like some basic tactics that they're gonna need. And it was also like we had just transitioned from 4th, and when we were doing the playtest for D&D Next, I'd had a conversation with them where I'm like, guys, this is not 4th. You cannot look at a fight and assume that it is balanced for you to accomplish. Like, you can kick in a door and there'll be 50 orcs and they'll all kill you. And then proceeded to kick in a door one by one and run into the room full of 50. Like, no joke, they did exactly what I warned them not to do. But in the starter set, there was a thing where they got completely wiped. And I said, guys, we're going to stop. And I asked them, like, do you guys want to restart? Do you want to keep the same characters? We'll just rewind and we'll try it again. Do you guys want to make new characters? Do you guys like want to be captured? Like, I can do all these kind of things. We can go wherever we want. What do you guys want to do? And they wanted to rewind and restart the fight. And I was like, great, that's what we'll do. We'll rewind, we'll restart the fight. You know, you guys now know what you should do. And then they did much better, and I was able to say, look, guys, this is what you, when you're paying attention, this is how you do. When you don't, so like it is you can rewind. Like, again, the game does what we want the game to do. So if we all loved our characters, you know, as much as we're going to come up with new characters next time, if we want to rewind, we can do that. It's okay.
And it's a gauge too. I remember in a lot of way back in old school games, it was honestly, me and my friends, like, it was like utter paranoia when we were playing, because there were like ear seekers and mimics and doppelgangers.
They were rough. Those early ones.
They
were definitely. It was like the DM was against the players instead of with the players.
Yeah, so you were paranoid about everything. It's like, do you put your ear to the door? No, don't put my ear
Near
to
the door? What, is there acid on the door? Why are you asking me to put my ear to the door?
Do you want to open the chest? Are you looking at the chest? It's like, no. Can we just no? Yeah. It's like, no, I didn't say that. Oh, okay.
A good DM smile can make.
Oh.
Do you touch the doorknob?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, what? No, what? What?
Like, the best DM question, I think everybody here will probably agree, the best DM question is, are you sure? Like, that inspires, like, the worst fear in everybody. Like, like, are you sure?
So,
you don't have to say it funny. You're just like, are you sure? And they're just like, oh, crap. Should I not?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, no, you can do whatever you want. I just want to make sure. Final answer? All right.
So I play with my current group. We play online. So there's only one other person in the room with me, and all the others we're playing via the interwebs. And so the best indication that I can give them is just when there's a long pause, and they say, so, and they hear a lot of paper rustling.
Oh, yeah. Or dice.
And they know, exactly. They know something's coming.
Something's coming.
What's handy too, every once in a while, put the pressure on, is to have an egg timer handy. You're like, what should we do? You know, it's if you want that
That's a
Indiana
great
Jones
idea.
moment of like the walls are
Right.
closing in, it's just like, well, you guys just take your time and decide. And there's an egg timer. I'll be over
Awesome.
here.
I just do that with my hand. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
1. What are you guys doing? And they're like, what are you counting? I'm like, I don't know. 2. What are you guys doing?
I love building tension like that.
So, Derek, you've mentioned the starter a few times, because we do have a question from somebody who said he's going to be DMing his first game in about a month or so, and he doesn't know really where to start. Like,
Sure, start.
So,
Pointing the
start.
starter.
like the starter.
Everybody's pointing at the imaginary starter holding up.
Well, no.
There's a box
Yes.
right behind you.
I actually
Well, now they can see it.
I brought the box that I use with the kids because it's kind of like the gaming kit. It's got pencils and crap in it, and all of their character sheets that have food all over them.
Oh, you keep their character sheet.
Yep. Otherwise, if the
That is
not be able
when
to
you,
play.
when you have a big group for sure. That is the best way to
Yeah.
do it.
Okay.
How old are the kids, by the way?
It varies, like, because it's hard for me to keep track because I remember like how old they were when we first started, and I keep just remembering that. Because I think when we first started, the youngest was 8, and the oldest was like 12, I think, something like that.
It's a pretty good range.
Wow.
Yeah, so now I guess they're in 8th grade. They grow up so fast.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it was definitely a wide range. We've had younger come in for a session or two. A lot of times they're really excited, and I'm like, great, here's a mod. Like, it was breaking my heart because the main kid who's totally in the group, it's his father who owns the place where we play, and his younger sister wanted to play recently, and she had just made a character, and she was super excited about it, but she is way young, and I was like, we'll start with a monster. And like it was just breaking my heart because she was so excited about her character, but she was not like at the point where she could sit at the table and keep consistent, because we play for about like an hour and a half, and she couldn't stay for that So I just kept asking her about her character, and she was telling me awesome stuff. And,
Aw.
and then I would run the monster when it was supposed to be her turn. But she'll grow up well to play, but she needs to. Yeah.
How old was she, or is she?
I'm terrible with ages. Like she was
Younger than
she was definitely younger than 8.
Okay.
Like I think she may have been like 6.
So
something like
do you think there's a sweet spot for when the right age is for kids to start playing D&D?
Regardless of what
Depends
the
on the
box or
kid.
product might say.
Right.
It really depends on the kid.
Yeah, it depends on the kid.
How old was your son when you started playing?
We started off, we played Heroes of Hesiod with him when he was 8.
Mm-hmm.
And that went great. And I think part of it, we were talking earlier about just new players and trying to give them, here's something to compare this experience to. And you talk about like Lord of the Rings, or you talk about some other experience that has a similar flavor. Mm-hmm. 8 was great because at that point they've got some kind of cultural experience probably that you
Right.
can compare it to. When they're much younger than that, everything is new and different. There's some advantages to that, but it also makes it hard to find a comparable that you can say, it's kind of like doing this. It's kind of like going on this adventure. And
Yeah.
so...
Adventure Time.
Right.
That's the other thing. Adventure
close, yeah.
Time has really helped get younger
Yes.
because Adventure Time is D&D
Sure.
written by an 8-year-old.
Very wonderfully weird D&D.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
But like, there's also just the math component, because even across the kids I have,
That's really right.
some kids are much more comfortable with the math, and some are very much not.
Yeah.
And there's also one who's undergoing some medical treatments right now that make it a little more difficult for him to pay attention or do the math, and that's a really big thing too. So like, if you have kids who are really young who want to play but don't necessarily have the attention of the math. There are simpler games, or you can all you have is a D20 and a D6 and an AC, and that's it.
Go.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to just strip everything else away, but that makes it harder to bring in a wider age range. So I think when you get really young, you kind of have to be like, okay, we're running a young kids game.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm running a game for a rowdy bunch of people who happen to be young. Is a little bit different.
And hopped up on ice cream.
Yes.
That seems like you're just asking for trouble.
I know.
There was one that popped up in chat that's another difficult question, so these are always fun to ask. So sometimes you will have a player, for whatever reasons, isn't necessarily meshing with the table. Maybe the rules lowering a little too much, or maybe they're really poo-pooing the role play or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I personally have probably only run into this a very small amount of times in my games, but it happens. So what do you guys do with these players? What have you done in the past? What would you tell the DMs to do with these kinds of players?
You got to talk to them. You got to tell them. Just be honest.
Yeah.
And especially if another player has pointed it out. Sometimes a DM can be, we're so focused in the game that we don't see it. And then another player says, hey, this happened and I feel uncomfortable, whatever. You got to talk to the player. Because the player may not even know he's doing it.
Mhm.
He or she may not. They may not know. Or they may have, it could have been anything. It could have been a bad day for them. It could have been anything. But definitely talking to them and letting them know, I think, is the best thing.
Yeah.
But it's a game, and if it continues, needs of the many.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing that's, there's behavior that's unappealing, just in the larger game sense. There's also behaviors in game that maybe just don't make it the most fun it could be.
Yeah.
So like people that, like to run off and be the solo hero when you have an adventure group,
Yeah.
or, want to do something that's so far out of the breadth of capability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so far beyond capability, and in those instances, you could talk to them. I mean, honestly, too, I use my powers as a DM to like, those things aren't going to succeed.
Yeah.
Eventually, they get the so it's like, I don't know which question they're probably asking more
Yeah,
towards
you're
that
saying,
end.
Is it in game or out game?
Right.
Is it
Yeah.
person or character?
Right.
Yeah, I think
Exactly.
it's an interesting thing, because I think the one that popped up in the stream was the solo hero, actually. The I'm the best at everything, and this is my story, and I'm gonna run things. And sometimes they're just, like you're saying, they're in that mindset where it's like, I'm gonna do this cool thing, I'm gonna do this cool thing, I'm gonna do this cool thing. They're just not considering the rest of the table, right?
So I often find, like, as a DM, that is an opportunity to essentially not reward the behaviors that are unappealing or unfun for the group, but also then you can't just smack that down every time they try. You essentially have to find opportunity for them to show behaviors that are really positive for the group. So give them an opportunity to succeed and feel the joy of that glory and that success in a more communal environment. So it might be something where you set up a thing where that person gets divided off with another player character, and to get out they have to do something essentially together to be able to get out of it. And you know, essentially you know, demonstrating that teamwork and giving them the chance to succeed and have fun in a way that's actually fun for everyone.
Well, I mean, D&D also already has turns. And you can use turns outside of combat. And especially with the kids, I very often do that because they really like breaking up into different groups, and I always encourage them to do that. But, you know, then that, you know, as a DM, you have to be able to hop back and forth and kind of keep everybody, you know, at the same kind of attention level. And if you have somebody who's hogging the spotlight, you can certainly stop and say, great, you know, you're going to take care of that in a little bit, but first we're going to deal with what he wants to do and what he wants to do and what she wants to do, and do that, and then come back to them. Because everybody's kind of already used to turns. I think when you're playing with a mixed group, if there's table manner problems, just like behavioral issues, it can be even harder actually with established players, because they are a little more set in their ways. Their problems are subtler to them to see. And they can, like, I certainly suffer from this problem. It's very easy as an established player to overmanage a new player too. There's a lot of ways, because the new player doesn't know where they can push back or what's okay or whatever. And I also think it's really important to just call out players when they're doing it when you can. And with the kids, I do that a lot with humor. But like, there's times when like they'll kind of start PvPing each other, not in a I stab him way, but like in a I slap his face, I stop what he's doing. You know, he's doing this thing I don't like, so I'm going to stop him from doing that. And usually I'll entertain that for like a statement or two and be like, oh, that's funny, that's great, everybody's laughing. And then the moment that like we're like, okay, we're moving on with the story, and someone's like, no, I'm still doing that. I said, you know, we're moving on with the story. Were this to be Lord of the Rings, you know, that's a blooper moment, but we're not going to spend 30 minutes with Legolas and Gimli slapping each other.
Here come the Uruk-hai over the hill. Let's go.
Yeah. Tossing the dwarf is fun once.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes you just got to be, and there's times where I've just had to tell them, like, that's really funny, I get it, but, you know, you might find it cool, but he's not going to. And just flat out tell them that and then move on.
I'm hearing you tell this story about the kids, and you actually have some better situations with them than we would have with grown-ups. Like, having that exact discussion with two grown-ups would be a little bit more difficult.
Right.
It'd be fun for you, but it's not going to be fun for him. And I'm talking to you like your kids, because we haven't figured this out yet. And I'm just like, oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, like there's definitely ways it's easier and harder playing with kids.
And that's part of the table too, right? Like we are in a great place where we've all played D&D a lot, or some of us anyway. But it doesn't mean that we all have the best social skills. Like even within our own friend groups. So you get some of them sitting down at a table and they may not interact the best with people. So
I think that's the strength of it, is the actual, like what we're talking about here is a situation where you're developing social skills. And you're going to go through and, like, could somebody tell you the perfect way to handle every situation? Like, nah, they're all different. Like, and there's all kinds of different people. But that's actually one of the great things that you get from the game if you play longer. You know, like people who've played the game for a long time, and they've just said, "Oh yeah, this totally taught me how to deal with people, how to like negotiate, how to communicate clearly, how to do all that stuff."
Situations, you hear that a lot from people.
Well, the important note there is that this isn't a problem for gamers. Like, you know, people can have all these kinds of social skill problems and never have played a role-playing game. Like, we don't have these social skill problems because we're role players. We just encounter them in a more structured and obvious way because of the game's format. Right. Like, there's plenty of people who would probably strongly benefit from sitting around a table and playing with each other for a while, and just have never had that confrontation.
Yep.
But we always hear a lot from teachers that like to use D&D as a teaching tool. Because I'm thinking about the stories that you're saying after the whole party wiped out, and you sat them down, and you're like, look, let's think about what you did wrong. And if you take that out of the context of D&D, and you're actually like with kids trying to like discipline them and explain like why you shouldn't bully other kids or why it's not nice to steal someone's lunch, like they're not going to listen to you. They're just going to be like whatever. You know. But to say it in like the game context of like, you know, you're really learning, I think, valuable skills.
Right.
So it should be mandatory that kids play these. It should be taught in elementary schools.
Yeah.
So we have heard from a lot of players that say, I want to play D&D, but I can't find a dungeon master. We're actually getting some questions from dungeon masters that say, I want to DM a game, but I don't know how to find players. So what are some tips there? Go to ice cream / arcade parlor.
Yep. Talk loudly in public about your hobby, and you will find people coming out of the woodwork. It's a weird thing.
I think you're right, because it always seems like there's always a shortage of dungeon masters. So. Wave that flag.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you see something that's cool related to D&D, post it on social media, and you'll probably, you know, look at the people who like it.
Yeah.
They might be people who are interested in playing with you.
Definitely. I like to post pictures of my game, and people like it, and it's like getting your friends to play or significant others is also a good thing.
Your wife did she not play D&D when you?
Before she met me, no, never played it before, ever, and now she's great. She loves it. She has a great time. Because it definitely can be a bug that can bite you, and once they get the initial trying it.
I think the harder part of the two as well, like as a person who's been a DM for years and has moved a few times, I've always managed to like scrape together a group and talk some people into it to get a game running, but a player looking for a DM is really tricky. Maybe you can talk somebody into that.
Well, there's two answers. One is give it a try. Maybe you're the DM you're looking for.
Yeah.
But I'm a really big advocate of events. Like, go to a con.
Yes.
Go to your store. You know, there's D&D encounters. There's tabletop day. There's local cons of a wide variety, even if it's not just a role-playing con. For a lot of people, like it certainly was for me at first, for a lot of people, playing with strangers is really weird. But I think it really helps. And then the other thing is that you don't have to make commitments. Like, if I haven't role-played with someone before, or I don't have a friend who's like, yep, they're cool, like that's the thing, I'm not going to commit to a long-term campaign with them. I don't expect them to either. We're going to say, let's meet up and let's play a one-shot and we'll just see how it goes. And maybe we'll have a blast, maybe we won't. But, the wider your range of people you're playing with, the more likely you're going to pull enough together to make that group. And then the other caveat is not everybody you play with has to be part of your group all the time. You can have multiple groups, you can join a group, you can leave a group. Like, that was the biggest problem we had in college, of just, that assumption that nobody could be excluded, everybody had to be part of it, we all had to be part of the same group. That led to a lot of friction. And it's okay to have multiple groups who don't play with each other.
A big reason I think why it might be hard to find either players or DMs is, especially if you're not in a environment that fosters free time. So like if you're no longer in a college environment or a high school environment, is just the amount of time that a session takes, but also to scheduling and marrying schedules is a big one. And so at first when you ask the question, it's like, well, how do people find players? Like I know a ton of people that want to play. It's not about finding interested people. It's about finding ways for people to all carve out the same amount of time.
That same amount of time on that day.
Same day. Yeah, with everybody's conflicting.
But on that note, one-shots are okay.
Yeah.
D&D encounters is okay. Like, for the kids, I have a ton of fun every week playing for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Like, we don't get very far necessarily. I'm not going to like hold this up as a paragon of storytelling, but we have a ton of fun, and it's playing D&D. So, you know, there's a lot of like shoulds and musts that sometimes you just kind of have to push people through. Of like, you don't have to play all night.
Right.
You don't have to play all day. You can play during lunch. You can have a ton of fun in a lunchtime campaign and just see where it goes.
Yeah. The other thing too is like, the idea of like, oh, I'm starting with a lot of people I don't know, and I feel like I'm a stranger is a little weird. But you also have friends out there, and they could be across the country or in a different country, and you can boot up like Google Plus or Skype or whatever, and still run a game with your friends, and that makes schedules a little more manageable, especially for parents. Like, I have to stay here with the baby, but I can Skype. And
That's
play.
what we do. Is like we have half of our group has kids, and we play online because 4 of them are in Alaska.
Right.
One of them is an hour away.
Yeah.
Half of us have kids. We play starting at 9 p.m. online, middle of the week.
Those kids go to bed on time.
And we've got a good programmer guy who's like gone in and made like a easy scheduling grid, so you just mark with an X all the days that you're not available, or like put in a P for only PM or A for only AM, you know.
Wow.
And with that,
That's
you
pretty
cool.
That's
it's
a good.
Every
tool.
D&D game should have
We
a product
to-
manager and
we kind of do. Thanks, Josh.
Graphic manager.
Yeah.
Well, you'll obviously have a lot more experience with the online stuff, but whenever I've also played online, I do think that you have to have that heightened awareness about table manners. Because when you're playing online, it's so easy to talk over other people or get distracted or get frustrated, and you don't have a lot of softer avenues to let it out. So that's almost always my concern with playing online is you have to be very, very clear with a lot of things.
Hands required.
Depends on where your camera is.
I think you're totally right. Is that especially that medium can be really helpful when you are time and location constrained, but I would imagine is exponentially tougher if not everybody knows each other. Like ours works because we're longtime friends and have done other cooperative things together. It's not just that we're friends, but that we've done other things that require similar skills, and so that etiquette stuff has been worked out. You know. But you're totally right. Like
easy.
that could break, I think, some campaigns because you can't rely on things like body language, small conversations. It's certainly
Sharing
more
your
stilted.
snacks.
Right.
The other cool
Right.
thing is with the advent of social media, sometimes you just got to throw a line out there, and you'd be surprised at how many people want a game,
Oh,
or
yeah.
want to run a game, or want to play a game that you didn't know. Someone that's in your class or someone that's you work with.
I think the trick there is to pick some details and just throw it out and be like, hey, who wants a game night next week at this time? As opposed to, because if you're just like, who wants to game sometime forever? Then you're going to get a lot of weird responses.
Yeah, but if you say, hey, this day, this time, this place, boom.
Yeah, and show up with the starter set or whatever else you're going to run, and show up with some other games as well, especially short games, because you can play them while you're hoping more people show up. And even if they don't, you still have some other board games to play.
That's a great idea. And I'm pretty sure if you have a local game store near you, if you walked in there and said, I want to be a dungeon master, they would be,
They'd
thank
flock.
God.
Thank you.
My
Yes,
prayers have been
they would
answered.
flock.
So we've touched a little bit about the time, like you said you played for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Somebody did ask the question, biggest hurdle in my D&D games is that we only have about 2.5 hours to play every 2 weeks. Any suggestions on getting as much content battles, character moments into one session as possible?
Because that's what I do. That's what I have.
That's what we have.
It's every other Monday. We start at 7 and we're over around 9:30, and we've been doing that for 2-3 years. It definitely helps if you write for them. If you, in a weird sort of way, it's kind of easier for if as a DM, if you know this is your time, if you know this is when you're playing, and everybody, and once you get that, you can write your encounters and your adventures to match that.
Yeah.
And I like to think of it kind of like a television show. So like here's this one's going to be an episode. This one's going to be a 3-parter. This is one's going to be continued, and going in, or if I take a published adventure, I will trim it down if it looks like it's going to be longer.
Yeah.
So sometimes that 2.5 hours can be a blast.
Yeah.
You don't have to play all night. You know, it's
Yeah. The onus is on the DM. I'm not always good at it, but it does really help if you can clear out some of the more procedural stuff through other mediums than just you guys all being at the table. So mystery emails go out and you get developed that way. Or story recaps so people feel like they're still
That's the
connected.
big one.
That way you're
what I
not
do.
spending the first half hour just kind of like, what did we do? How
Yes.
injured am
That's
I?
what I started doing.
We
made a Facebook group
I was
that's
going to
just
say,
our
people
group.
have wikis or they have Facebook
Right.
pages for their
And
group.
so the day before the game, I say, previously on D&D,
Yeah.
Right.
blah, 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 blah. That's what's happened. And then
Yeah,
once
it's
we
more
get
work
together.
for you. It's
Yeah.
appreciated.
I found with really tight like schedules like that, like let's say it's a lunchtime game.
Right.
Those are really tough because you have like an hour, but really you have like the first 15 minutes is, if you're lucky, people getting ready.
Yeah,
And
right.
then people might have to scoot out early because they have a meeting or something. So you really might have a half hour in there. And I've just found like when you get something really tight like that, you kind of go with the flow, and you either end up with a really like sort of narrative, plot heavy kind of game where people are just like talking and you're leaving foreboding hints and you're building up, or you kind of get like the fight game, right? So if you can kind of build up the tension and build up all this stuff in a game and get everybody talking and everybody's in character and they finally make it to the gate and you've told the whole story to that and they're like, in the next game, you will open the gate.
Oh.
People love to have
And-
something to come back
I
to.
do.
Right,
Yeah.
and then they get the, it's like, okay, next week's gonna be more of a fight, but, they have to be enjoying that part of it as you're pulling it up to the.
Honestly, I think the key to running on a tight timeline is, as a DM, being willing and comfortable with just calling something, and
Yes.
just saying like
Yeah.
this scene's
Definitely.
done. I have a comment about combat momentarily because that's actually a problem. But with a lot of role playing scenes, again, like when you're playing with a variety of stuff, familiarity, like comfort level, there's definitely a lot of time of where you can have a back and forth, people talking each other in circles, and there's a lot of times where I just stop and say, okay, what are you trying to get out of this scene? What do you want from the guy? Like, tell me what you want,
Yep.
and I can get us there in a faster timeline. It's like, especially because like I've played with players in the past who are like, okay, so does the ceiling have this? Okay, would you say that? Okay, would you say this? Well, then based on your statements, then I can do this and get this benefit out of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, how about just, instead of that 20-minute conversation, why don't you just say, hey, can I get cover? And then I'll say yes. And then we can go on.
And then you got it.
So, like, a clarity of purpose from the player communicated to the GM, and then a GM willing to be, great, I've accomplished what I need from this. What do you guys want? Are you just here to buy stuff? If so,
Right.
just tell me what it is and just write it off. Or like, what is it you're trying to do? This scene is done. We can move on.
Right.
It happens with fights too. There's also fights that are sometimes are just not worth really getting into. And the challenge that I find is I like sometimes the unexpected of how much did that fight cost you, but I don't want to go through the 20 minutes to find out. So sometimes, like with 4th edition, it was easier for me because I'd be like, make some rolls, okay, you lost some healing surges. You don't quite have that freedom sometimes with 5th. The fights tend to go faster, but I don't feel like I have an easier level to be like, okay, it's done, here's your cost, here's your ticket, pay your fee on your way out. But still being able to be like, okay, this guy runs, this guy, the sheet says he has 20 more hit points, but that hit killed him. Just being able to kind of shave stuff off of, it is very clear where this fight is going. We don't need to hold it up any further. Just let it go.
I really liked your egg timer idea, and I imagine that's actually super helpful, especially in a time-strapped game, so you don't have people hemming and hawing, like, should I or shouldn't I? The other thing that I don't know how D&D PC this is, but is to have everybody do their actions like at once. Like, so rather than like, okay, I do my turn, okay, I see what happens, and then like, okay, now that I've done that, now what do you want to do? Rather than doing that, is like, okay, everybody figure out what you want to do. Who is it you're going after? And like, let's all enter those in kind of at once, and then it makes it feel a little bit more like kind of a crazy melee. But
It's funny, what I'm getting from what the both of you are talking about really, to me, is like a snapback in history of D&D, where it's like, what really works when you have these tight time limit kind of games is sort of like the old school dungeon crawl, where it's like, get to the point, tell me where we're going, all that kind of thing.
Kick in a door, kill the dude, take stuff.
Kick in a door, kill the dude, take stuff. Even what you were mentioning is like in sort of older school games is the caller, where everyone around the table decides what they're going to do. They tell the person who calls it, and that person tells the DM.
That in the old first edition, they said that you have a leader, and that's how it would work.
And it's really efficient, right? If you want to, run through and just.
One trick I've also used to keep combat flowing is, and I have to remind the kids of this all the time, is one, don't hide initiative. Like there's no point. It maybe, but in almost every case, just don't bother. But one of the things I really try to drive home to the kids is when I come to you and it's your turn, I want to know what you're doing, and I want to see the dice in your hand with the damage dice ready to roll.
Let's go.
Just go.
Yes.
And like if something changed, great. We can discuss it. That's fine. So I always be like, hey, it's your turn. You're on deck. To remind them, like, hey, figure your stuff out. And that just doesn't always happen with the kids. But as a DM, I always, especially in a convention game, anything that's on a tight timeline, it's very much like you're up next. By the time I come to you, I expect you to at least have 3 things that you might want to ask me about and then go.
Yeah, and that's the thing that works well with adults too. Chris Perkins, for our longer, when we were into the epic level stuff, for 4th edition, we definitely had those fights where he was like, okay, Jefferson, it's your turn, Trevor, you're next, so start thinking about what you're doing. And it's because we're doing a lot of things in one turn at that point. So it was good to start planning out what you were going to be doing.
And with 4th, you had so many, by that time, you had so many cards, so many things to choose from. And it was nice where I would notice how some players they were figuring out what they were going to do before their turn. You can tell the ones that are like getting ready and the ones that are just like and totally not paying attention because it's not their turn.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I really like, and I've seen analog and digital expressions of this. I really like just the like with the index cards over the DM screen
So
and
they
marking
can
out
tell.
what the order is. I love that, and there's a lot of digital tools that do the same thing and like show who's on deck and show whose turn it is. I like those a lot.
The like as a player, I always try to be like, I'm always on my phone as well because I'm always doing something. But when it gets to my turn, I always want to be like, okay, I missed because I've already rolled to hit. The die is sitting there so they can check if they want to. But I've already rolled everything, and it's like okay, I hit, I missed. Here's the damage. Here's the thing. I moved the guy there. Done. And like like that to me is the player responsibility of not holding things up.
Here's another interesting one about somebody who was having a hard time preparing games for lower level characters, for 1st and 2nd level. He says, or he or she, actually, I don't remember who submitted this, I feel like I can't throw anything cool to these levels. Do you have any tips or ideas on how I can make a low level campaign as exciting, adventurous, and magical as a high level one? And I have to kind of agree, not as a dungeon master. I don't really like playing low-level characters anymore.
Okay.
I've had a taste of the good life, and I don't want to go back.
and this DM is specifically talking about doing that without raising them to 3rd level or higher.
Right.
Yes.
So I did something this weekend for the first time, and my players loved it. And they're 3rd level, so they're still kind of,
Yeah.
kind of. What I did is, if it was a special monster, instead of like describing it or picking up the book, I had photocopied the monster from the monster manual and I stuck it on a straw and I went like this.
That's great.
They loved it. I mean, I know that's not a rules thing, but when it comes to like feeling magical, they dug that so much. Yeah. I mean, I didn't do it for an orc. I did it for something neat. So they knew they were coming up against. And when I did it for another monster, like when I threw a chul at them, they were just like, oh, what's that? Instead of like flipping the book and holding it up. Yeah. Let me see that again. You know, they just.
I love that.
And I'm going to do that from now on.
Good.
Awesome.
That's a really hard question because I love low level
Yeah.
players and running. Love them. Love it.
Why do you like it?
Because I think you can throw lots of really cool, neat stuff. It's like they can be made to feel that they're more in more danger than they are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's
Yeah.
that fear, it's that unknown.
They're at the edge,
It's-
low hit points.
Yeah, they're like, I got 10 hit points. Oh man, you know, and it's, I don't know. I think you know, a 5 cobalts is something like, oh man, you know, we got to deal with this.
Yeah.
I really like both. So I haven't actually gotten the opportunity to play as a character at a super high level. So, but what I really like about low level characters is you can even say this to them. It's like, essentially you are at the level that you would be in this situation, right? You're not
Yeah.
much more than just you.
But still better than everybody in the village.
Right, exactly, right. Because it's like, so what would you do? You know, and getting some excitement from just like, man, imagine, you know, you being the one that faced down this, you know, snarling. And this is where the window dressing can help a whole lot, is that it's not so much about like, okay, how many, you know, what's the AC of the thing that I'm trying to hit, or how big is the monster, but just how menacing can they be, and that's a lot of that comes down to the DM of, you know, doing a lot more role playing with them, and
That's
Describe.
exactly what I would say. Is that, at least for me, the answer to that question would be description.
yeah.
Because, and it's not necessarily role playing, because role playing will sometimes to some people
Sure.
means like talking a character.
Sure.
Not everybody's comfortable with that, but the more descriptive and colorful you can make anything, the more exciting it's going to be. Like, again, it's probably the background of games that I came into the hobby, but I love anything horrific, body horror, creeping things. Like, if I can get a couple of my players at the table just to like creep back a little bit, fantastic. That was a good session. So I try to key on that, and when I see them like starting to like be creeped out at some horrible thing the orc is doing to their friends, then I will push that a little bit further, to just keep that description evocative. Like, I can't think of any monster, whatever the level, that I couldn't find a cool way to creep somebody out with. And sometimes it's the way you set up the combat. Sometimes it's just like, you got 5 kobolds, and I know that later in the session there's going to be like a dragon or something like that. Just start describing some of the stuff the kobolds carry. Just throw in as much detail as you feel you can manage. Or maybe it's start figuring out the details you are good at providing and improving, and just go full hog on that improv. And then take notes. If your players really got creeped out because you described the way that all the kobolds were burnt or something like that, because whatever, you thought it was neat, then great. That really freaked them out. Figure out why the kobolds are burnt and have more burnt kobolds down the road. And maybe there's a weird cult who burns themselves, and now suddenly everything is not just a stock kobold. There's some weird thing to discover here.
Yeah, I usually too is when I'm in that situation is file off the names, so I don't tell them it's kobolds or goblins or anything like that. I just describe them. You describe the situation, you make it creepy. They may not be supernatural, but you make it feel kind of supernatural, and you blow it out of proportion, because this is your first tour of duty in Vietnam, and you're scared and you don't know what's going to happen. But if somebody has played D&D a bunch of times, that's sort of what you were describing, where it's like you feel like you've gone through many tours of Vietnam, so now you're just like, let's rock and roll. But your characters aren't. So you always have to make, like, these characters are new and inexperienced. Everything is, like, unknown to them, and they're freaked out, right? They aren't hardened yet. Yeah.
On a practical level, like, I'm realizing as we're talking about, giving flavor and creating visuals for people. From a practical standpoint, though, like a level 1 or a level 2, like, they got maybe like one thing that, like, I can swing at him again. and we all reduce him by maybe a couple hit points, like, swing at him. again. And I have seen players really, especially if they miss too, like not only did I have to do the same thing I did last turn, but it was also ineffective.
And
I've
that
seen people,
is why I hate playing low level characters. That bugs me.
right.
No
and
way.
so from a practical standpoint, like, we can add description and all of that, and that can really spice things up. But I mean, practically speaking, that's hard to get around, especially if somebody has tasted, having a whole lot more in their arsenal.
But the
So
thing
what
I
do you
noticed
do?
about 5th edition is even at first level, each character can do more than one thing.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
The fighter can do more than just swing. The wizard has more than just one spell, and it's fun to watch my players. They're actually 4th level right now, so they can do a few more things. Yeah, once you get 4th level, it's like, oh, I can do new stuff.
Yeah.
They take to it. That's the other thing too. Is like with the pacing and the descriptions and everything, letting the players know that we're doing this, and right around the corner there is also some more cool stuff.
Yeah.
Here's some cool stuff. Here's some more cool stuff. And,
Yeah.
oh man, there's some real cool
We
stuff.
could
right
we
here.
could probably do a podcast just on making it cool for the level characters. There's enough stuff. Like I'm
Yeah,
gonna
we could do a
yeah,
whole
I'm
thing
gonna
on it.
I'm gonna name like so Chatty DM out there in the Twitter world. Philip, he is amazing at making low level characters feel epic. Like he will run nothing but something if he's like fighting a dragon kind of thing, and you're like 1st or 2nd level, and like the stuff that a lot of it's character driven, a lot of it's like, can I do this? Like he might have a room that's filled with a little bit of water, and you might have shocking grasp. It's like, can I use shocking grasp in the water to get all the things? They'll be like, yeah, it's a great idea, and you'll role play what happens and all this stuff like that. So there are ways to do it, but I think that's a next level DM kind of thing that's harder for new DMs to get.
But on a specific note, to answer your thing of, well, I only have one thing to do. How do I feel epic? And to kind of, I think, tie into a little bit of old school there is that you have like ability checks and skill checks for a reason. And like there's definitely, especially with new players, there's definitely that mindset of, well, it doesn't say I can do it, so why would I do it?
Right.
There's also the GM or the DM confidence issue of how do I adjudicate this weird thing? But the more you can allow that weird thing to happen, the better. And with 5th edition, I think the math is somewhat easy to figure out because just off the top of my head, make an ability check, give them a proficiency modifier if you want. It's about the same as hitting with an attack. So kind of adjudicate it as an attack. Like, is it a good thing? Then sure, like a D8, D10 damage
Is it
against
a
one
good
guy.
thing? Give him advantage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so
advantage is my personal like
I love
someone
Yeah.
describes like, can I do this thing? Well, it's like, well, describe what you're doing. Yeah, you have advantage. Like 90% of the time with new players, they do like that's a cool thing. Then sure, you have advantage. Why? Because you did a cool thing.
Well,
Right.
everyone forgets too the 1st level character utility belt, which is like bag of flour, flask of oil, handful
All
of
the
ball
crazy
berries,
stuff you can do,
Right.
just
like
random things.
little caltrops, like a pole, a 10-foot pole.
10-foot
That's a good
fish,
point. Like,
Yeah.
rely on
Yeah.
your equipment. Almost
Yeah.
everybody's carrying
That's
It's
something.
another reason the trinket table
Yeah.
is
And it's
amazing.
not just your
That
weapon.
creativity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
throw a bag of flour at it. I stick my trout in there.
But the
And
thing
what's that do to the gears?
The
Like,
thing
it's
that
like,
I
yeah.
love the most, or one of the most things that, okay, let's start over. One of the things I loved the most about 4th edition encounter building was when somebody would try to build in an encounter power or something that was
Yeah.
very clear to a player to pull this lever, make cool thing happen.
You know we have
Yeah.
that in the new edition too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But this is where I loved it. How about
Okay.
that? But just giving those levers and encouraging players to pull them
Yeah.
is very, very helpful to making sure that everybody has
Right.
more options than
Yeah.
they initially thought they
The
did.
moment you explain there's a chandelier someplace above you and there are mobs of dudes on the ground,
Travis Simon.
someone
Someone's
is-
getting up
Someone's
there.
someone in the party is going to do something. Like
Well,
that.
there's also the whole thing of like, someone's like, hey, is there a chandelier I can jump on?
Yep.
Or, well, so this is because the kids transition from 4th to 5th. And they actually, and the father who plays with us sometimes, they've had a problem going from very tactical combat to very narrative combat. They like to know where they are. And I think especially for new players, sometimes the grid is actually helpful.
Yes.
It's a weird toss-up. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not.
Depends on
But
how
being able to
spatial you are.
look at the table and see what's happening without having to ask the DM can help and speed things up.
Yeah, there's a little bit of AI part where
Yes.
it's like, I'm always asking
Yes,
permission.
but one of the ways that I have tried to resolve that is when they're like, the rogue's like, hey, can I get around to the other side to backstab him? And I know that you don't need to do that, but they're still going to ask.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I want to do this thing to give me a mechanical advantage?
Yeah.
Be like, great, make a skill check. You know, and did you succeed? Great, you figured out how to do it. Did you fail? It didn't work quite so well because whatever. But that allows a way to just kind of very quickly let them do a thing and get the benefit they want and feel like they were doing more.
Right.
Sweet.
Yeah. And I appreciate it as a player when I miss, the Dungeon Master still makes it seem like I was this close.
Yeah.
You
Missed
know?
them by that much.
Oh, just got out of the way.
That's what
All
I-
right.
The trouble is, whenever I say that, they know, oh, I missed him by one. And that is my little clue to them,
Yeah.
that they missed him
I'll
by
give him like a little cut across the cheek
Oh,
or
that's
something.
right.
It's like, oh, you gave him a scar.
Right.
He'll remember you.
Now half of his hair is gone, but
You
he's
made me
still.
bleed my own blood.
Yeah, well, like if somebody if they're fighting somebody with a shield and they missed because of the shield, I tell them that he blocks it with the
Yeah.
shield.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And then
Yeah, yeah.
they
They
might
know.
be able to think of like, okay, if we can get the shield away from him, it's going to be easier.
That's awesome. I like that.
Yeah, that is very good.
Well, I think we've run out of time, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm kind of sad.
I know. I'm always sad when these are. These are great.
I like this.
These
But
are great.
there are other questions. Maybe we can save them for another time, or maybe we could convince some of you to maybe answer them, and we'll post them online.
There we go.
Sure.
That'd be fun.
If you
Have a
would be
follow
fun-
up.
If you would be so.
Can we
so
meet in a
kind.
room with a chandelier next time?
I know.
Yes.
I have
no.
an idea.
I would like to survive for my other meetings.
You need to make a
I
skill
don't
check
know.
to see if
a
it's
room
great.
with 4 dungeon masters and 1 chandelier. How bad could it be?
Yeah, that was. No, we're screwed.
That sounds like a rough band.
So,
Four.
before we, yeah.
4 DMs and a chandelier.
Yeah.
Just to wrap up, because you guys have given us some really good advice. I always leave here a little inspired to
I
be
do.
a dungeon master, but
I'm only running one
It
game
wears
now.
off.
I want to go run like 7.
if you could leave us all with one tip, just one, out of something you said, or something someone else said, or something that you wish you said. One tip for exciting games introducing new players. What would it be? Richard.
Wow.
I know. Boiling it all down.
Come on, dude. You can do it.
Egg timer.
I really think the trick is just get a bunch of people together that you know you can have fun with.
Yeah.
Like that's
that you
really
would have
just-
fun with. That you'd really want to go on an adventure with in real life.
Yep.
Right.
Make sure everybody's kind of chilled out, relaxed. Like this is not serious. We're just gonna have fun, and we're gonna go do some fun stuff and have a little adventure. Yeah, just keep that environment and make sure everybody's laughing really hard and yelling and screaming and all that stuff, and you're all good.
Excellent. Jefferson.
I begin every game session I run at home with a shot. All the players take a shot.
Don't do that, Derek.
Yeah. Not okay for your
What, he
game.
did- no.
This is for adults.
Specify what
Yeah,
kind.
exactly. He did not specify
But
the
yes.
content of that shot. If
That's
I
true.
gave
It could be
every
chocolate
kid
milk.
an ice cream shot, it would be
Yeah.
a very different kind of
That'd be
game.
awesome.
There's something binding about we're about to go forth and do
I
this.
like
Yeah.
it.
Modern
So
day
yeah, it
grog.
could be a shot of soda, whatever.
And we
Yeah.
should specify this
fluid.
is for your home game, not your lunchtime.
This is- I don't know what I'm going to do for the lunchtime game. I'm going to have to think of something else. But yeah, definitely, I think being comfortable, you're with people you want to be with. It's a game, and it's you'll laugh, you'll make memories, and yeah, keep it fun. Always remember that it is a game, and you want to be there.
I think if I can especially speak to the people that are contemplating being a new player or a new DM or just waiting in, don't sweat the rules too much.
Yeah, that's
No one gets the rules right all the time.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about a DM screen is they can't see the times where you're like, just go with that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and that's okay. You know, the important thing, like you said, it's about a group of friends getting together and having fun.
Yep.
It's not about, you know, how perfect we are with the rules. So don't sweat that stuff.
That's good advice.
Yeah, like my top pick is basically, what you said, of just relax, chill out. You're here to have fun. The only wrong way to play a role-playing game is if you and the people you are with are not having fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, that is literally it. Whatever else you want to put on top is window dressing. It's what your group likes. It's how you want to play. But if people are having fun, you're doing it right. And then personally, I like description.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree.
Excellent, excellent advice.
Sweet.
Thank you guys.
Thanks. We will have another one of these soon, I'm sure.
Yes, yes.
We'll be reaching out to you guys again to get some questions going.
Yeah.
And then, we'll take questions and chat again. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a good time.
If you missed any of it, it'll be on our YouTube
YouTube.
channel.
I'll get it on
so
YouTube
subscribe
shortly.
to the D&D YouTube channel.
And
follow us on Twitch.
Our chat also wants to thank the DMs for being so awesome. So thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
A round of applause for you guys.
Thank you to the chat for your awesome questions, too.
And we'll see you next time.
20.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.